Welcome to Podcast Answers, the show where I help people start and grow their podcast, answering any podcasting questions along the way. That's right, and today is no different. We are going to be talking with Daniel Lewis about his service, Podgagement. And so I've been waiting a long time to actually get Daniel on the show. So our schedules kind of mismatched a lot, but Daniel is finally on the show. So Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andy. It's great to talk with you.
Yeah, we've known each other. We were just chatting before we started recording. You know, we've known each other for on and off for a long time. Like on the internet, we've known each other. We've seen each other way back. We followed, the same original podcasters. I've been podcasting since 2007, on and off. And when did you start podcasting?
Yeah, same thing, 2007, April 2007. So
Okay.
Here we are going on just past my anniversary.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's been a long time. I feel like one of the OG podcasters, because when I started, it was not
Right.
this easy.
Oh, no, we were working with mixers. We were working with stuff that was designed not for podcasters, but for
Right.
musicians. And we were
Yes.
hacking it together to make it work for podcasting.
Yeah, you had to know what a mix minus was in order to bring in your guests, and it was not easy. Bringing Skype in, and yeah, this is so much easier these days. But we've gone back and forth. I've seen your name in a lot of different forums, and we work together in the podcasting 2.0 community, and so for the long time you had a product that helped podcasters see their reviews. Can you tell me a little bit about that first, going that way?
Yeah, the original product launched 10 years ago now
Oh, man.
was My Podcast Reviews, and it would focus on your podcast reviews. That's why it was called My Podcast Reviews. The SEO for that was fantastic. And what it would do is solve the problem that many podcasters don't know this, that when your podcast is in Apple Podcasts, it's not only in Apple Podcasts as you see it, but it also goes out to now 175, up to that many different catalogs for different countries. And each one of those countries have their own ratings, reviews, and rankings for each podcast. So
Yes.
if you had a review, if you're in the USA and you had a review from someone in Canada, you wouldn't see it. Apple doesn't notify you of it. Back then, the process to go finding it was really complicated. Even today, it takes a whole lot of clicks and it's extremely manual. You're not notified. So my service started to solve that problem for you, save that time in finding those ratings and reviews for you so you wouldn't have to go looking yourself, and then delivering them to you automatically, either on a immediate basis as soon as they're discovered or on a weekly basis, depending on what you wanted your account set to.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so, that service had been going a long time. I've heard of it. But then just recently you completely rewrote that and came out with a new product. So can you tell me a little bit about your new product?
Yeah, I wanted to completely rebuild things from the ground up to make the product better, to solve even just branding issues that I had with the previous product. But my main focus was really, I wanted to do so much more than only reviews, because under the My Podcast Reviews branding, I did launch some features called the lovethepodcast.com page and followthepodcast.com page, which the love page helps you to get more ratings and reviews. It gives you a really nice speakable landing page that's optimized and smart, device aware, and all of that. The follow page is also smart, very speakable, device aware, but it focuses on helping you get more followers for the podcast. So those two features right there were starting to branch out beyond only ratings and reviews. And I wanted to do so much more with the product to serve podcasters better, because ratings and reviews are just nice to have. They're not necessary to have. I really wanted to focus on all the other ways you can engage with your podcast audience, and thus the rebrand and complete rebuild to the new product, Podgagement, which is short for podcast engagement.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about this. I know that you've got some different levels, but you had mentioned that it's more than just reviews. So what all is included in that? What can I get if I sign up for Podgagement?
So everything, if anyone's familiar with what My Podcast Reviews was for the last almost 10 years, everything that was in it has been moved into Podgagement and is available on the lower tier that I call Astro. Everything on Podgagement is very astronomical and astronaut
Yes.
themed. And I promise you, I made the names of the plans and the color scheme before I even knew the video game Starfield existed. So
Gotcha.
don't tell me I copied their color scheme and constellation from them. I came up with it before I knew that game existed. But that aside, it's a fun space theme. I enjoy embracing that, and also like go for launch. And we want to shoot our podcast to the
Yes.
moon and beyond, and all of that. So I love all the metaphors, visual, and uh, figures of speech that we can use with this. But when you sign up, the main thing that I now point people toward is the constellation tier.
Okay.
That's the higher level that provides a lot more features that go beyond only ratings and reviews. And that's where I really want people to go, because that's where the best features are going to be.
Hmm.
So the features that you get there, in addition to all the tracking of ratings and reviews, in addition to those speakable landing pages to help you get more ratings and reviews or get more followers to your podcast, there are also new tools to help you better engage with your audience. Like one of the first tools that I wanted to launch with that's included with it is the voicemail feedback feature. And it also allows your audience to send written feedback. So again, just like the lovethepodcast.com and followthepodcast.com pages, you now get a castfeedback.com page where you can send people to send you feedback. So it is very speakable. So you could say, hey, if you want to cast feedback to our podcast, go
Sure.
to castfeedback.com/ whatever you choose as your slug. And it's a nice, very simple page that allows people to either write a message to you, or they can record a message by pressing the record button. And you, as the podcaster, can set the length limit of that. It could be anywhere from 1 minute to 5 minutes. What I really like that I did, and when I say I like things I did, it's not so much bragging, and it's really
Sure.
me not bragging. This is what since I'm a podcaster first, these are things I wanted and
Hmm.
that I see other podcasters want. So when I say I love how it does this, yeah, I'm the one who made it do that, but I love how it does that because I wanted that. And
Sure.
I know other podcasters do it. So it's something I'm just excited about, even if I didn't create it. But one of those things is that have been services out there where you could get voicemails from your audience, but it would be only voicemail. What if someone, you know how sometimes it goes when someone is doing their podcast voicemails to you, they're talking and giving their feedback for your podcast, and then they come along and they tell you their website is theaudacitytopodcast.com. And you're like, wait, what? What did you just say? I want to link to it, but I couldn't. You spoke so fast, and it's not a race. Well, with this voicemail feedback feature, I made it so people can also include a written message with that in case they want to write any URLs or give any citations in there or any references or anything like that, so that they could include that with the voicemail, making it easier
Gotcha.
for the podcaster. And now that's transcribed. The other cool feature that I launched with is what I call networking, where when you look at a podcast inside of Apple Podcasts, scroll down to the bottom and you'll probably see something it's been labeled different things over the years, but it's essentially a you might also like
Hmm.
section. That is algorithmically generated, where Apple has determined that based on the subjects and based on crossover audience, these podcasts are probably related to yours.
Hmm.
That's what I call outgoing networking, where you're seeing other podcasts listed on your podcast. I track that from my customers so that they can see those other podcasts that might be related to them, that they could reach out to for possible cross promotion, collaboration, competitive analysis, whatever they want to do with that
Sure.
information. But maybe even more exciting, because you can go into Apple Podcasts and see that yourself. But even more exciting, I track all the other millions of podcasts in Apple Podcasts to see which of them are algorithmically linking back to your podcast.
That's
So
awesome.
then you can see information you otherwise wouldn't be able to see
Right.
unless you clicked through all of the millions of podcasts out there. So again, you can discover marketing opportunities, cross guesting opportunities, and more ways to engage with your audience, engage with other
Hmm.
audiences, engage with the community around whatever that is that you're talking about. So those are the incoming and outgoing networking. And just a few days ago, when we're recording this episode, I launched another feature that I've wanted for years. I'm so excited about this feature. I call it the image maker. It allows you to turn any rating and review that you get for your podcast into an image. You
Mm,
can also just make a general image for your podcast that has your nice cover art, the name of your podcast, your artist name, and your total ratings and reviews and average score. So it could show like 4.5 stars from 100 ratings and reviews
sure.
or something like that. And it's all beautifully designed. And each of these offer multiple layout formats. So you can get square for like Instagram, you can get tall for Pinterest, you can get
Nice.
a widescreen for video. You could use the tall version for TikTok videos or vertical videos. You can even get the perfectly ratioed version that works great on LinkedIn and Facebook, which instead of 16 by 9, it is 1.91 to 1. That's their ratio.
Wow.
But then it's scaled perfectly to that. And you can change these things, toggle certain options on this, and then download it as a high resolution, high quality image that you can use in all of these places. And I love it because of all the potential that you have for it and ways that you can share that with your audience instead of having to copy and paste text.
That is so
And it
cool.
looks great.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's such a cool feature to be able to do that. Because I know, like, that's one of the things you want to do when you have those ratings and reviews is share them. I mean, that's what the ratings and
Yeah.
reviews are good for, right? Social proof. And so if you can share those, and if you're providing an easy way to do that, that's just yeah, even better.
And especially like you look at some of these platforms that are visual only, like Instagram.
Hmm.
If right now, if you look at my Instagram account at the Daniel J. Lewis, that's my social account pretty much everywhere, you'll see that it's my episode artwork. And that is pretty much it.
Hmm.
I've had nothing else to share because I just am not, I don't take selfies.
Hmm.
And I just don't really think of here's an image I could share. And I don't really like game the system to share an image of something and then write a long post. But now I could easily share my ratings and reviews in images and use those as opportunities either to promote the podcast as a whole or maybe specific episodes that those reviews were about.
That's really cool. I like that, and the whole system is great because I like that you're going after the whole engagement because that's one of the
Right.
hardest things to do in podcasts, you know, and the voicemail feature that you described it is great too because again, people yes, there are other sites that allow you to do voicemails. Those have been around forever, but yours, you know, like you said again, you have that ability to go and write down text also either or, and that way it's easy to get to know, and you said it transcribes right too, so if I
Yes.
leave it, it transcribes it. That's perfect because you can easily copy that, put that in your show notes if you want before you play out the sound. Yeah, that's a great part of the product that you have there.
Thank you. I love making things easy for podcasters that would otherwise take them a whole bunch of clicks. Like even just the ratings and reviews feature,
Hmm.
I've counted it. It saves podcasters 1,400 clicks
Oh
every
man,
day
that's
in what we're
crazy.
doing for you. And that's just the ratings and reviews feature.
Yeah, that's definitely that's crazy. Well, and then so you said Apple Podcasts. Is there any other systems that you're able to pull ratings and reviews from?
Yes, Good Pods and Podchaser are already supported, and they do allow listeners to rate and review podcasts. Spotify is a hard nut to crack because
Hmm.
they make certain features available in their app, but they don't make it available to developers through APIs. But I found a way. Unfortunately, on Spotify, you don't get to write a review. You only get to leave a rating of 1 to 5 stars. And the way that I can get that data in is still a little bit limited, but at least it's something that
That's
you'll be
cool.
able to track.
Hmm.
And that's going to be launching very soon as well.
That's awesome. So you had mentioned that being a future plan. Are there any other future plans for Podgagement that you can speak of right now? I know you're a developer and you don't want to commit to things saying we are releasing this because I've seen when that happens, people get really mad when it doesn't come out. So anything that you can talk about in future plans for Podgagement?
Well, I'm really excited about the image maker now
Hmm.
and how easy it is now to make beautiful images with that. So I am going to be listening to my user base to find out what kinds of other images do they want to make. I've already gotten some good suggestions, so I'm going to make those into images and offer more templates and more things that they can make into great looking images for their podcast that will help them engage their audience. So that's extending that feature. But brand new features that I have announced previously will be coming at some point later this year are I want to track the charts. And that's actually how this whole thing started is I started trying to build the My Podcast Reviews version 2.0 5 years ago.
Oh man.
And along the way, I stumbled across some data and I started tracking that data. And that's how another spinoff site started, podcastindustryinsights.com, where I've been tracking like how many podcasts there are in Apple Podcasts and all of this. But since then, I was tracking these charts. So I've got 5 years of data on Apple Podcast charts from every country and every catalog. It's over a terabyte of data right now. I keep having to upgrade the database server. And so that's coming that you'll be able to see your chart position there, as well as certain features like maybe what's hot or new and noteworthy here and there, but also even more practical than that, because some podcasters won't make it into the top
Sure.
400 of a category. And that's fine. You don't have
Hmm.
to make it into the top to be successful. But one of the things that does matter, I think maybe more for podcasters, is can their podcast be found for things that they talk about? So I'm building an SEO measurement tool that would allow podcasters to enter the terms they want to be found for. And then they could start seeing where they rank in those
Mm,
search results, as well as eventually get some AI powered suggestions of what they might try to rank a little bit better. And
gotcha.
some of the obvious things, in case anyone's wondering, the most obvious thing you should do today if you want to be found for something, bonus tip here, make an episode about that thing, that one thing that you want to be found for. And if you're thinking, I want to be found for a bunch of things, make a bunch of episodes. Try to stick with one topic per episode so that that episode can help your podcast rank better for that one topic. So that's bonus tip there. But I'm going to work on tracking that for podcasters, as well as working on some more AI powered stuff, even some podcasting 2.0 stuff. Like whenever we figure out exactly what we're going to do with the social interact tag, getting nerdy there for a minute, and cross app comments and some of this stuff, I'm going to integrate that into Podgagement because that is a way that audiences can engage with podcasts. So obviously, I want to work
Yeah.
with that.
You mean you're not going to be like Sam Sethi and implement it before it's even done?
No, I'm not that quick. I'm a full-time dad while I'm also doing
Yeah.
this, building this product and trying to run a podcast and run a business. So I've got my hands in many
Oh yes.
fires, the way I like
Yes.
to put it. But it's very fulfilling work for sure. But so I'm not as fast to implement some of the fringe things. But then again, sometimes I like to think that maybe I can be kind of like the Apple, where I'm not necessarily the first to the space, but maybe I can do it the best.
Yes. Yes. And that's the best way to do it, because if you can do it well, then it's going to be a good, it's going to be something good for your customers if you can implement it well and have it, you'll have great fans if you can do it well.
Yeah, and this was something that I took away from the Walter Isaacson book about Steve Jobs several years ago when I read it, is I realized in a way I am kind of like Steve Jobs in that I'm not so much an inventor, more so an innovator.
Hmm.
That I'll look at a problem and my first thought is, how could this be better? And that's where I often approach things and look at how can I make this better for podcasters? How can I make it so podcasters can make their podcasts
Hmm.
better, grow faster, achieve whatever their goals are for their podcasts? How can I do that when everyone else is zigging? How can I zag and be better at it?
Hmm. Definitely. So let's talk a little bit about the cost for the product. What does it cost if I want to go out and get podcast or Podgagement different levels? What does that cost?
Well, I'm going to be a little bit general on the
Okay,
pricing right now
sure.
because it is about to change a little
Okay.
bit and I'm tweaking a few things. So, generally, well, one thing for sure is you only pay for how many podcast slots you need. So,
Okay.
none of this stuff like paying for 20 slots when you only have one podcast. If you want only one podcast, you only have to pick one plan.
Okay.
You first decide between do you want the lower Astro tier or the Constellation tier? And how many podcasts do you want with that? You're going to be looking at around $5 per podcast for the Astro tier and around $10 or $12 per month per podcast for the Constellation tier that has all of the extra features on
Hmm.
that. That pricing, that's just
Sure.
very general, but it's
Sure.
in kind of that
In that
range.
area.
Yeah.
Awesome. And that's totally doable. I mean, for a podcaster, either of those prices are pretty easy to do, and you get so much out of it too. So like I I feel like that's worth the investment for a podcaster to to help grow their podcast.
Yeah, no, also for the time it saves. Like
Oh
one of the
yeah.
first lessons I learned when I was running my own business in the early days of running my own business, I spent hours trying to solve a technical problem on my computer that I could have solved with a $4 app,
Mm,
but I didn't want to spend $4.
yeah.
Instead, I wasted hours and hours, and I could have just simply spent $4.
Yeah.
And when I got out of that mindset, then I was able to focus on what's more important for me and for my business and for my podcast.
Yeah, definitely. So I suggest everyone go over to what's the URL for Podgagement?
Podgagement.com.
Very easy to remember. Very easy to remember. I recommend everyone to go over there and check that out. Daniel, thanks for being on the show today. But what else? Where can people find you at?
Pretty much everywhere on social media as the Daniel J. Lewis. I'm mostly on X Twitter and through my podcast, The Audacity to Podcast.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for being on the show today.
Thank you, Andy.
All right, that was an amazing interview with Daniel. Daniel, thank you so much for being on today. If you have a new podcast app that you can send boosts, if you boost this episode, Daniel will get a part of that split. He is in our split for this episode, and so he will get a part of that boost if you boost this episode. So if you want to give some value back to this episode, go ahead and do it right now because Daniel is in the split. Guys, if you have not checked out Daniel's new service, go ahead and do it right now and go ahead and subscribe and tell him that we sent you. And until next week, guys, have a great week and keep podcasting.